We are now here in Mauritius for a special coverage. The COMESA Competition Commission, the CCC, holds here a press conference to brief us on key enforcement cases handled by the CCC in 2022 and to announce their landmark decisions. In a few moments, so we will have an interview with Dr. Willard Mwemba, Director and Chief Executive Officer in COMESA Competition Commission, the CCC.
COMESA competition regulations have one principal mandate, namely to prohibit all business practices, to prohibit all business agreements and business conduct that deter the efficient operations of markets.
So we have now the pleasure to have with us on RTV International Dr. Willard Mwemba. He is Director and Chief Executive Officer in the COMESA Competition Commission. Pleasure, sir, to have you on RTV International.
It's my pleasure. Sabaha kia.
So, Dr. Willard, can you tell us more about the COMESA Competition Commission and its role in promoting competition and enhancing the welfare of consumers in the COMESA market?
So the COMESA Competition Commission is one of the institutions of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. The Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa is established by a treaty that brings together 21 member states from the southern tip of Africa in Eswatini to the northern tip of Africa in Tunisia. And the objective of COMESA is to ensure that we have a strengthened economy, convergence of our economies through the attainment of full market integration. Now, how do we achieve full market integrations? Our governments, our leaders realize that to achieve this full market integration, which basically is the creation of one common market, yes, to achieve that, we needed to do a number of things. And among them was the reduction, elimination or significant reduction of tariff and non-tariff barriers, so that they did to a significant level. But then there was also a realization that if we are not careful, once we reduce or eliminate these tariff and non-tariff barriers, it may not benefit the citizens of the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa. Okay, it may end up, all the benefits may end up going in the businesses that will be operating in this market. Those businesses, instead of the consumers, all the proceeds and the benefits of these policies, liberal policies, may end up being in the hands of businesses, and not just businesses, few businesses who are already entrenched in the market. Yeah. So the COMESA member states realized that, and they said we shouldn't just end on the abolition or significant abolition of tariff and non-tariff barriers, but we should also make sure that we implement rules and policies that will regulate the conduct of companies operating in this COMESA market to avoid having a situation where we only have few and create a situation where we have so many. So quickly, what COMESA then did, our leaders, they did say, let's agree to prohibit any business practice that negates the objective of a free and liberalized trade. And that's how the COMESA competition regulations through the COMESA Competition Commission through the COMESA competition regulations was formed. Its objective is simply to prohibit all business conduct that deter the efficient operation of these markets in COMESA and that are offensive to consumer, whose conduct is offensive to consumers.
So, Dr. Willard, in this press conference, you have revealed some restrictive business practices involving African Confederation of Football, CAF, and its exclusive agreements about the commercialization of marketing and the media rights for African football tournaments. So how the CCC dealt with this case, and what about the undertakings of CAF after your intervention?
That's a very good question, and as you may know, football is very important in Africa. We all love soccer. Your country, Egypt, is a soccer-loving nation. I think you've gotten the Africa Cup about 5 times. Yes. And yeah, so you are the kings of soccer in Africa, but you should be very careful. We can see other people already yes. Beginning to catch up, yes. Especially with what we saw with Mo Salah and Sadio Mane yes. in the last African Cup of Nations. But what I'm trying to say is anything that frustrates the access of to watch football on our televisions here in COMESA, okay, and Africa in general, and if it is as a result of anti-competitive business conduct, should not be acceptable. Yeah. And in this case of CAF had engaged with its partners into agreements that were exclusive without an open, transparent and competitive tender process for long duration, yes. In some cases for over 20 years, because these agreements had automatic renewal clauses that every time it is about to expire, there will be an automatic renewal clauses that would go on and on and on. So the Commission was worried with that, the COMESA Competition Commission was worried with that from this angle, that it was restrictive to having other companies participate yes. In the administration and the marketing, the commercialization of these marketing and media rights. And then we also realized that it could be the reason why the broadcasting rights yes. Were very expensive, making it very difficult for most of our governments to access those rights and pay for them to make sure our fans watch that football. So we had to intervene. Yeah. And when we intervened, we gave a number of commitments to which CAF should comply. Yeah. And among the commitments were that in future, CAF should have an open, competitive, and transparent tender process when they are engaging these companies, and that these processes should be subject to an objective criteria of selection, yes. and that criteria should be shared with the COMESA Competition Commission for verification that it is objective, yeah. and also that CAF would publish the results of those tender activities on its websites for everyone to see, of course subject to the reduction of confidential information. The other commitment that CAF was asked to comply with was that these agreements should not be for a long duration, yeah. as has been in the past. They should be a maximum of 4 years. 4 years only. Yeah, exactly, 4 years only. But sometimes markets may not, depending on the market situation, it may be possible that a 4-year period, a longer than 4-year period may be required. Yes. In that case, then CAF should come to the Commission and tell the Commission that we intend to engage with this company for a period of more than 4 years, review it and advise us if this is okay. Yes. Okay? And then finally, we had told CAF to remove the so-called automatic renewal clauses or preferential renewal clauses, which makes these contracts go on and on and on. And then as they do all those things, yes. every 1 year or at the within 30 days of each anniversary of the coming into force of these undertakings, yeah. CAF should submit an affidavit to the COMESA Competition Commission, which affidavit is signed by a senior official in CAF, confirming that they are complying with those undertakings. And yeah. if they don't comply with those undertakings, then they risk being fined, and the fines may be hefty, because breaching the undertakings that you've committed to the COMESA Competition Commission is a serious.
So, Dr. Willard, also on this press conference, and especially in the field of COVID-19 PCR pricing, you have exposed the results of the CCC investigations into potential violations of competition rules by some medical laboratories operating in the COMESA region. So what were your observations and your concerns about that? And tell us more about the measures that you have taken at this regard.
Hany, you agree with me that at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, it became a serious requirement, in fact, a regulatory requirement for all of us to undertake or undergo a COVID-19 test and then produce a negative certificate if we were to travel. And in some countries, even to access certain government facilities, you had to produce that negative COVID test certificate.
Yes.
Now, we also observed that at that time, in most of our countries in COMESA, the average price to access those laboratory tests was on average about $100 on average.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are quite concerned. We are not experts, and it was difficult for us to say, well, it should be less than $100. But our intuition told us that this appears to be quite excessive. And what was so worrying also was that on average, in each and every country, the prices were almost similar. And we are wondering why that would be the case, that the prices would be for that test would be almost similar in all those countries when they have their own peculiar situations.
Yes.
So we got concerned with that, but the luck came to us when South Africa, when the South African Competition Commission actually investigated some companies, some laboratories for excessive pricing. And in that case, the conclusion was that as a result of that investigation by the South African competition authorities, those companies ended up reducing the prices of their PCR tests by 50%. And they did the same in Eswatini, which is a COMESA member state. Now, these companies are the same companies that were operating in a number of our other member states. So to us, it became very clear that our suspicions could have been very right.
Yes.
And we initiated our investigations, and that for now, we have not yet come to the conclusion of the case, but the investigation is still ongoing, and we still believe the COVID PCR testing was excessive. And if we establish our case, then we'll come back to the media and tell you the outcome of those investigations. But suffice to tell you that one thing I've liked is that some of the companies that are involved are very cooperative they are cooperating in the investigations.
Dr. Willard, how the mandate vested by the CCC can regulate welfare in the COMESA region, especially that you have announced your response to passengers' complaints on some airlines?
That is a very excellent question, Hany. Whatever we do at the COMESA Competition Commission, whether we are regulating competition, whether we are regulating mergers and acquisitions, whether we are enforcing against restrictive business practices, what we have in mind is the welfare of the consumer, because all these actions should end up benefiting the consumer. But we know that sometimes going through the competition route is a longer route of enhancing the welfare of the consumer, because there are certain activities or conduct by businesses that are directly and immediately injurious on the consumer. So we come in to protect them as well. You mentioned the airline. We have seen with concern a rising trend of airlines violating the rights of passengers. And we said this cannot continue. We need to protect our passengers, who are our consumers, who are traveling on these airlines, and they are on the weaker side when they are bargaining with the airlines. So we've done quite a number of works in the airline industry. I think we are in the past we've investigated about 3 airlines, and what I'm glad to report to you is that in all those cases, the airlines cooperated with us and they compensated the passengers, which is commendable.
So we are coming to the end of this interview. In shipping field, why the CCC have launched an investigation of shipping liner companies operating in the COMESA region, and how by the cooperation of member states of COMESA, you can prevent consumers from anti-competitive practices?
Excellent. Shipping is a very important business, Hany. It moves goods and services from overseas to our continent into COMESA. Whether you're importing goods from Europe, you're importing goods from China, you're importing goods from wherever, they will come through ships. And we got concerned that the conduct we saw by some of the shipping liners of signaling prices, which makes it easy for their competitors to see their price, was worrying. And then we realized this worry was not just here in COMESA, but our colleagues in Europe addressed similar worries. In fact, had fined heavily the companies involved there. And we said we should also do something. And what are the consequences? The consequences of such behavior is that it may make the cost of shipping goods be very expensive. And if the cost of shipping goods is very expensive, ultimately what that does is that the cost of the final good that goes to the final consumer will have to factor in all these inflated prices as a result of anti-competitive conduct, which makes it very expensive for our consumers in terms of the final product, yes, which erodes their welfare. Yeah. So we had to come in, and those companies are also cooperating. It's still an allegation at this stage, yeah, but we are worried with at least what we saw on the market happening, and we hope, yes, we can bring that conduct to a stop.
May you can talk to us with more details about the investigations made by the CCC on products recalled during 2022 in the COMESA market in order to protect consumers?
Product recalls are actually a very important aspect of consumer welfare enforcement. Product recall means there is imminent and immediate danger to the consumption of products that are on the market, yes, and the only way of protecting the consumer is to remove them from the shelves as quickly as possible. So the cases that you've spoken about, we saw cases that contained cancer-causing agents. We contained agents causing cancer. We saw products that contained salmonella. Yes. We saw medicines that were recorded in some parts of Africa for children that contained certain substances that were fatal to children. You remember from the media reports that we had so many deaths in some parts of Africa and beyond. We saw that, and we were very mindful that if they find themselves in COMESA, there was a danger in losing our children as well, and we were very proactive to make sure that doesn't happen. So product recalls are very important, and the cooperation of member states become very, very important. And Hany, I'll be able to tell you that our member states are very cooperative, and they do understand that some of those things really affect the welfare of their own consumers. And immediately we begin talking about a product recall, everyone is on their feet to make sure those products are not on their shelves.
So my last question for this interview. In this year, 2023, the CCC shall commemorating its 10th anniversary on upcoming May in Malawi. So we want to know more further on your future outlook, especially that we are suffering a lot of the high price of foods.
You hit on a very important subject, and food is a very important subject because basically food is life. Without, yes, food there's no life. So if we've witnessed, you are very right, the skyrocketing food prices, and that's the focus. That is our focus for 2023. We want to understand why is it that we are seeing these high food prices, which are making it very difficult for most of our consumers to afford food, which is a basic right. Yeah. You see now people are going in our countries, people are going to bed hungry. People have to ration and say it's either I eat dinner and I won't eat lunch, or if I eat lunch I won't eat dinner. So what is causing that? And we've heard, yes, so many reasons. Others are saying no, the war in Ukraine and Russia, but others, that can just be an excuse. We want to find out, is it that companies operating in our member states are taking advantage of a situation that is not true to point to the situation that they've created? So we will be focusing on that. We are partnering with Consumer International to make sure that we identify the causes of rising food prices, and once that is identified, we'll make recommendations to our policymakers on, yes, how that may be addressed.
So Dr. Willard Mwemba, thanks a lot for this interview.
Shukran Gaziran.